Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to a sadly very special episode of the Weekly Reset, in a week where we were getting ready to talk about the conclusion of a genuinely thrilling race to world first in Sanctum of Domination and the ongoing Shadowlands story campaign. Instead, there is only one topic worth talking about today: the lawsuit against Activision Blizzard brought by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing for discrimination. And although I won't be indulging in every last nitty-gritty bit of content of this report, making this episode would be impossible without mentioning bits of it. So, content warning. Sexism, racism, and all of the coolest dudes that you grew up placing on a pedestal and wanting to be like, who made some of your most cherished pieces of media, turning out to be a bunch of dude bro dickheads who believe their own rock star hype. The report is extensive, explosive, and makes for harrowing reading for anyone, but especially for anyone with emotional investment in the games industry as a whole, and the games of Blizzard Entertainment in particular. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that's all of us. The reports are from countless sources, over 29 pages, cover multiple years, and form a picture of a company run by a boys' club of man-children who at worst were complicit in and at best enabled the abuse and discrimination of employees at a systemic level. It's grim, it's messy, it's the tip of the iceberg, you feel, both for the case itself, which will likely be going on for years, and for the cases that will doubtless come to light now in the wake of it from those who feel emboldened to come forward and tell their similar stories. And it is true that you could doubtless tell a similar story about game studios across California and beyond, and throughout other industries the world over, how none of the causes of these problems are unusual or surprising or rare, and that sadly, if you are a woman or a minority watching this video, you will recognize many scenarios in this report, whatever job you work, because we as a society still haven't found a way to properly convince men to just not harass people that they work with. Like, apparently that's a really difficult thing to do. That is absolutely true and undeniable, but this investigation is into Blizzard, and it is Blizzard and only Blizzard that we will be talking about today. And there is no way to read this report and not be affected by it somehow, whether that be as a person or a consumer. It features accounts of well-known, I would go as far as to say legendary members of the company acting in the most cliché, disgusting abuse of power ways, and then the most senior members of the company essentially closing ranks to protect them for years before eventually, when the heat got too fierce, allowing them to leave quietly through the back door without criticism and presumably with a nice handshake. It describes a culture of mistrust, underappreciation, and outright hostility towards female and minority employees, and of retribution against those that speak up against it. It is sickening, and even if, like me, you approach video game consumption from a position of love the games and the devs who make them, hate all multinational corporations, always, without question, seriously, all of them, they are all terrible, those 29 pages are going to impact the way that you see Blizzard Entertainment from now on. And note, I don't mean Activision Blizzard, I mean good old, lovely, cuddly Blizzard Entertainment. Because that's the thing, isn't it? For many of us, Blizzard is a company that we put on a pedestal, that we romanticize, that we traditionally see as an example of what games publishing should be, certainly back in the more innocent times of the mid-2000s. And that's one of the things that deep down hurts so much about this. And why a lot of people are having such a hard time processing it is because this is a now Blizzard problem. This company is full right now, as I speak, of people that need to be held accountable for their behavior, whether in directly hurting those around them or enabling it and covering it up. There are names that you have heard of who have some incredibly difficult questions to answer and big prices to pay, and you hope that this case will make it happen. But it can't stop with the people still at the company. The earliest of these accounts has been described as over a decade old and speaks to a systemic culture problem at a company which was chock full of those living legends, the hallowed names, the ones we see as heroes and rock stars in positions of power and authority, which meant there is no conceivable way that they would not have known about this kind of stuff, which certainly seems like it was endemic. And you're kind of left with no choice but to accept that this is very much an always Blizzard problem. And then you start to think about how a lot of those legends did actually leave pretty abruptly and unexpectedly, and often with very little fanfare. Many in the last couple of years or so. And then you remember that this investigation has been going on for about 2 years. And it feels shit to think about. It feels like a betrayal. So I don't blame anyone for not wanting to think about it, because basically, our faves are problematic, and I hate it when my faves are problematic. We might never know the real truth. Everything could happen behind closed doors and be sorted under NDA. Blizzard could well succeed in completely burying this. Their outrageously terrible official statement was petty and aggressive, basically coming across as offended that the state would even dare to investigate numerous collaborated accounts of harassment and discrimination. Just about calling it fake news and blaming bureaucrats? Like, seriously, I would read it out loud to you now, but I wouldn't be able to do the shameless level of sneer in this statement justice. I think the only way to really achieve that would be to have Rudy Giuliani read it in the parking lot of Four Seasons Total Landscaping. It was a bad statement, which was followed just now, as I was writing this piece, by another statement from Francis F. Townsend, who used to be George W. Bush's Assistant for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, because this is the kind of person who Activision hires now, who would very much like to assure you that in the 4 months that she's been Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs at Activision Blizzard, she hasn't even been sexually harassed at all, like once, and the accounts are untrue, or in some cases, old. So sorry, victims, you must be mistaken. But the fact is, this is going to drag on for many years. More and more people are speaking up all the time. It frankly doesn't matter what any of us want to say about it, because the only important voice right now is that of the victims. And all in all, you'd have to say it's been a very bad week for Blizzard. Actually, no, that's not right, is it? Because actually, it's been a brilliant week for Blizzard. The bad week for Blizzard was every other week leading up to this one. The weeks where people with power indulged in harassment and discrimination without punishment. Where victims were silenced and traumatized and hounded out of their dream jobs by bros who believed their own hype. No, this week, where we are hearing those stories, learning the truth about some of those people, where an actual case is being brought against the company because of them, I would go as far as to say this is the best week in the history of Blizzard, because this week, for the first time, the possibility of some small measure of justice for those who deserve to be heard and compensated and just officially believed, and don't underestimate how much that's worth, and for those who deserve to have their actions known. Because right now, there are employees at Blizzard who are very nervous about what is going to be revealed next, and you can bet there are ex-employees at Blizzard who are sitting at home very nervously watching this unfold. And yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good week for Blizzard, actually. That's the news, and so next has to come the important question that this video is, for me at least, really about. What can we do? What should we do? Well, first and foremost, the answer is obvious. For the love of God, believe women and minorities when they talk about harassment and discrimination in the workplace. Fight for more transparent avenues of complaint procedure and accountability. Just generally, in your life, in conversation, be in favour of more diverse work environments and back unionisation, which, although prone to problems of its own, gives employees representation beyond HR departments whose wages are paid by the same employers that the victims are being harassed and discriminated against by. Don't partake in cringy gamer culture discourse that tries to make women and minorities feel unwelcome or out of place, and call out that shitty behaviour when you see it. Social stuff, obvious stuff. The much, much harder question is, what do we as players and community members and content creators do? And that's an incredibly difficult question to answer. Honestly, I haven't even tried to answer it myself. I've rather selfishly chosen not to really think about that until I'm over at least this feeling of wanting to burn the entire thing down. And by the entire thing, I mean the world. Because frankly, though it would feel really good, I can probably accept that's not a great solution. But man, it does feel good. Righteous anger feels awesome. And chest beating on Twitter and in my very own YouTube video is definitely cathartic. But that is, sadly, all it is. The fact is that everyone is different and everyone will have their own reactions to this, what it means to them, and how best to deal with it. And the only thing you must do is respect that. So for example, you might know someone who wants to cancel their subscription because they simply can't bring themselves to even look at the title screen anymore. And that, for them, is the correct response. I applaud it. I feel like doing that right now, and it might well be how all this ends up for me. If you know that person, please respect that decision. Do not be a fedora dickhead and belittle that decision by saying, That's a useless thing to do and doesn't help anyone. Because that is bullshit. It is not useless if it makes you feel like you're doing the right thing and gives you a feeling of self-respect. Oh, but methinks that if you cancel your WoW sub as a stand against harassment and discrimination, and then go to play, say, a Riot game where they've had many similar problems, or EA, or CDPR, or basically any other publisher, then methinks that maketh you a wee hypocrite, and actually far from making a stand, you have not a leg to stand on. Yeah, piss off with that, okay? Yes, it's true that it is basically impossible not to give money to evil people in our society, because there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, but that doesn't mean that people can't pick and choose which products and companies they actively avoid if it matters to them. I repeat, it is not useless or meaningless if it matters to you. So if someone cancels their sub, respect that. Likewise, if someone doesn't, because people play this game for all manner of reasons. Some of us just like bashing buttons and killing baddies, but for many of us, it's more than that. For many people, it's a safe space that they use to get away from problems exactly like those we've been describing in this video. They find strength and hope and meaning and belonging in this community. I know for a fact that many of the victims whose accounts are in this case against Blizzard keep an active sub to World of Warcraft because they are proud of their work on it and because it makes them happy to do so. And if you wouldn't tell the victims of this shit show that they should make a stand and cancel their sub, then you shouldn't tell anyone else that, frankly. As I said, cancelling a sub isn't a useless or meaningless thing to do, but there are also some things that it definitely doesn't do. It doesn't hurt any of the guilty parties in this. Even if you did bankrupt the game, they'll all just fail upwards into something else, and now a game that we all love doesn't exist anymore. And the same goes for people who still work at Blizzard. Don't you dare demand anything of them. Don't you dare demand that they give up their careers and livelihood to make a stand against their abusive employers. When so far the only people who have made a meaningful stand, the only people who have made a difference and worked and taken risks to shine a light on this bullshit are people who work or did work for Blizzard. We have no idea how many ex and current employees contributed to this investigation, and if you want to burn it all down and never even have to think about Blizzard again, then I don't blame you, and that's perfectly fair. But if you care about fixing it and justice for the people who were wronged, then the people who work there right now have the best chance of doing that, and they deserve your support, not your keyboard holier-than-thou preaching, especially, and I don't believe I have to say this, but apparently I do, female and minority Blizzard employees, because nothing says I care about a safe and healthy work environment for women than harassing Christy Golden on Twitter. Am I right, fellas? Likewise, creators who make their content on the game, you stay off their backs, okay? All of them, but especially, and I can't believe I have to say this, but apparently I do, female and minority creators. Because we are all justifiably angry about what has happened for the last at least 10 years. But it is not most Blizzard employees' fault. There are more victims than abusers here. It's not content creators' fault. It's not someone who cancels their subs' fault. It's not someone who doesn't cancel their subs' fault. And it's not the fault of people who can't decide what to do because they're humans and have that weird human trait of having lots of different conflicting thoughts and emotions at the same time. No, it is simply and exclusively the fault of some dude bros who treated other people like shit and other dude bros who protected them. It is the fault of a workplace culture that has been in place for decades and which, if we are honest, and this is really sad, is probably in a more hopeful place now than it's ever been just by virtue of having it under scrutiny for the first time ever. You wouldn't shout at someone that they were supporting evil by watching Good Will Hunting or Shakespeare in Love on Netflix, so please save your justifiable anger, your laudable zeal for justice for those that deserve it, and everyone else who is hurting just as much as you. Have empathy for them and however they choose to proceed. But here at Taliesin and Evertel, we overwhelmingly make World of Warcraft content, and I have an obligation to decide how I feel about it and what I'm going to do, and to let you know that. I talked about all of this extensively on stream, and honestly, I don't know. Yesterday, I couldn't bring myself to even look at the launcher. The very idea of logging into World of Warcraft made me feel guilty and sick. In the evening, I decided to honour my raid made commitments. And honestly, despite how little I wanted to be there at first, hearing my guildies' voices on comms was just such a relief and so comforting that by the end of the night, I'd have given anything to be allowed to stay in that protective bubble with lovely people and not have to log out. Truth be told, I don't feel like streaming WoW right now. I certainly don't feel like making videos about WoW right now. We have one made from before this news broke, all finished and ready to go, which we have to release soon for contractual reasons because it has a Squarespace spot in it, and which actually is a video I'm really proud of. It's about the new cosmology chart in Grimoire of the Shadowlands. It's got a mind-blowing revelation in it, and truth be told, for some reason I am weirdly into any lore from this game that Alex Afrasiabi had no hand in crafting for some reason. I just didn't want to put that video out yesterday or today. We'll see how I feel tomorrow. We have a Final Fantasy XIV video that we've been working on vaguely for a couple of months now, which we will probably make a priority so that we have even longer before we have to start thinking about WoW again. Basically, I think it will all come down to how much energy I have. Because frankly, I'm old and I'm tired and I feel like walking away right now and never having to think about this ever again. That, right now, definitely feels like the easier option. But then, on the other hand, I love WoW. I love the game. I respect the majority of people that have worked so passionately to make it. I love the community and the good people who belong in it. World of Warcraft may have been built by a certain group of guys at a certain point in history, but it doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to me. It belongs to my guild. It belongs to the RPers and Argent Dawn. It belongs to Red Shirt Guy and Limit and Echo and Nagura and Annie Fuchsia and Preach and Bellular and Asmongold and Charm and community artists and machinima makers and podcasters and some dude who logs in a couple of days a week when his kids are asleep to keep up with his renown and farm a couple of old mounts. It belongs to Anne Stickney and Scott Johnson and Henry Cavill and Wowhead and Blizzard Watch and Raider.io and the thousands upon thousands of people who have worked to make this game exist, many more of whom have been victims of this abuse of power than perpetrators of it. And I can see the attraction in saying, yeah, we could burn all of this down, but where's the justice? You don't burn your best friend when they have a deadly disease, you get them to a doctor, and I can absolutely feel the power of being part of the cleanup here. Of saying, you know, bros, thanks for all your hard work, and the good ones can stay, but I'm Taliesin, son. I've defeated the Iron Horde and the Burning Legion. I've killed the Lich King and vanquished old gods. I've done my Lawmaster. I've completed 30 out of 36 Mage Towers, and I have vanquished Garrosh Hellscream exactly 1,436 times, trying to get his shoulders, which I still haven't got, but that's okay. I will be damned if I'm going to let some dickhead NPC beat me now. Not today, Field Marshal dickhead. That's what I can imagine. Right now, I don't know if I have that energy. I hope I do, but I don't know. Coincidentally, my parents are visiting next week, which will let me just take a bit of time and get some perspective, get my thoughts in order, but I wanted to end this weird-ass episode by thanking you. When this news broke at 4 a.m. UK time, but I was awake because I was editing that video I told you about. We decided to open our Twitter DMs for anyone who wanted to talk or vent or whatever, really, and the literally hundreds of messages that we received since have just been wonderful to read through. I mean, sad and heartbreaking and confused and scared and every other emotion you can think of, but seeing the strength of feeling and the thought that people were giving to their decisions on this has made me feel just so grateful to know you guys and to be part of your community in some small way. I guess what I'm saying is, I'm proud of you and I'm proud to know you. Look, I'm not very good with the whole feelings things, all right? Whatever the future holds, whatever you decide to do, whatever we end up doing, I hope we can still be friends. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you to all of our patrons who make our channel possible. And until next time, from me, Taliesin, and Evertel, and Anirin too, cheerio.